We are back on the Infowars Nightly News, and we're joined now by Kalen Ackerman, better known by his street artist moniker, MEAR ONE. He's been a graffiti artist since at least 1986 and has been known by names including the Michelangelo of Graffiti. He has his pulse on the culture, and as you're going to see from a lot of his artwork, he's politically awake as well. We're going to hear from him what he thinks about a lot of current events and where art and culture and our entire society is headed. Joining us now is MEAR ONE. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. What's up?
Well, first of all, what is your take? We have an election coming up. Society is in many ways turned against the establishment. There's a lot of alternative news information, a lot of alternative culture that has taken root through the internet, through the streets. Give us your overall breakdown on where we are at this point in time.
I guess I'm highly frustrated and upset with the whole system of, puppeting choices. I feel like voting at this point, other than just holding on to our rights to vote, is useless. I would hate to see that right taken away, but the options we're given with the ability to vote, we're just placating ourselves. It's really it's a broken system, and I feel like whoever you put in charge, whoever you replace the last idiot with, it's just more idiots trying to represent idiocy, and it's a broken system. We need to fix the system before we worry about the representative.
Right, and so, but I'm interested in fixing the system through our alternative systems and spreading a message in a new way, and that's what we're dealing with, the technology. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Tell us about how you woke up, how you got involved in art, and some of the major projects you've been involved in.
Well, I've been, I guess as far as art goes, my mother was an artist. I was raised by her from, single parent upbringing in Los Angeles here, and so I was highly influenced by her. And we both, I had a lot of political discourse in my little family, once a week talking about the news, talking about economy and stuff like that, and watch my mom and uncle and grandmother get into bickering fights over this stuff, get very passionate over it. And it's been part of my dialogue since a little kid. And around 1979 or 78, I took a trip up to Oregon, and a friend of my mother's gave us a cassette tape that had a lecture on the future of our planet with global warming and the illusion of democracy crumbling apart, and kind of this really frightening view of the future of war and economic slavery and polluted realities. And so I guess back then this was highly fascinating to me, and it's been a source of my dreams, a source of my inspiration, a lot of anger I feel about society and government and authority figures in general, which has been expressed in me being a graffiti artist for decades now. This has been a big source of energy for me to pull from so that I can express myself. The world seems pretty confusing, and there's not many places you can go to release these emotions or these ideas, and so artwork has been a great facilitator of that for me.
Right, and we're specifically showing viewers right now video of your allegory of complacency. Among other elements, it includes a big pyramid with an all-seeing eye, a very familiar theme to our listeners. But what inspired you to this and some of your other major works, and just give your point of view on that?
Yeah, I guess traveling around the world and looking at money has always been really interesting to me. And the most interesting piece of money in the world to me still to this day is the $1 bill from the United States. It's a very frightening type of noir, strange, dark, mysterious piece of paper. I never really understood it as a child, and I was always fascinated in understanding the iconography, especially on the back side with the Great Seal and some of the symbology that's embedded into the number systems that are represented in the eagle, or the all-seeing eye, the Great Seal. These are powerful mythological iconographies, and I've been really interested in understanding what do they mean, how they have an effect on us, And what is mythology? You know, what are, you know, like religion and many things. Why do these ideas that we can't fully interpret have so much power over us? So I've been deep into research, I'd say, for a good 2 decades. Fascinated. You know, I started out with Behold the Pale Horse when I was in high school, and that kind of really got me into digging deeper. You know, what do they call it? Data mining online and whatnot, and researching as much info as I can. And you know, what I've come to terms with is this idea of this pyramid. You know, the separate eye that floats above the lower base is really a metaphor for the elite power and the working class that this world consists of.
So, MEAR ONE, you were explaining some of the symbolism in your painting. Of course, we see an all-seeing eye with the masses of humanity at the base, and you were explaining how this represents an older allegory for you.
Yeah. I guess years ago I read this poem by Plato, a 2,500-year-old poem of the Greek philosopher called The Allegory of the Cave. And it inspired me greatly because it made me realize that we Americans are falling short to the same problems that people have been falling victim to for thousands of years on this planet. And it's basically wool being pulled over our eyes. And the poem was about a group of slaves that were captive in a cave. And they sat on a log chained to each other, and they stared at this wall. And behind them there's a blazing fire, and their captors used hand signals to create puppeting type of animal shadows on the wall. And these prisoners believed that this is what reality was. And one day when the captors were away, one of the prisoners stood up, took his chains off, and walked to the end of the cave to where the light was coming in. He peeked his head out and realized that there's a beautiful world of trees and fresh air and rivers and valleys and mountains and other humans. And he ran back out of amazement to tell his people that there's another reality actually taking place, and this is not it. And out of fear, they told him to be quiet and put his cuffs back on before they got in deeper trouble. And it just, it reminds me of the way we allow the nightly news and the newspapers and our institutions and our educational systems to corral us into thinking certain ways with religion and everything else that kind of tints our vision of what's really going on around here. So, you know, my mural, I guess, is a beacon for those who are looking for a way out. They're looking for an alternative way of interpreting reality.
Right. I mean, that's profoundly on point, because you were talking about the symbolism. It's been seen in secret societies for hundreds, thousands of years, really, going back to the old Egypt systems. And there's kind of one meaning on the surface for the public who are under this limited paradigm, a controlled perception. And then these same symbols have deep, inclusive meaning for the people who run the societies that run the world.
Yeah.
But then you've got...
I mean, that's...
But then street art today is, in a way, hijacking that and kind of rebranding some of the same imagery. It's very interesting.
Yeah, some of us are, you know. It's a hard battle out here. I mean, I stand alone quite often. There's only a handful of us that really dig deep into the symbolism and into the intentional purpose of this type of thinking. You know, this type of thinking generally isn't just to have lightly over a cup of coffee or something and go about your day. This type of thinking is transformative. It's meant to basically change your perception on life and give you a backbone, give you some hope, give you something better to believe in than lies, you know?
Exactly. Well, you know, hip-hop culture in general and street art has gotten, you know, the term street cred lends itself to those kind of artistry, the idea that it comes from the people, but at the same time, through the record companies and the controlled corporate media, we see a hijacking of all that and kind of a narrowing of those messages. I mean, can you talk about the impact of that kind of art over the past several decades and why it appeals so much to the general population and ways that it's been controlled?
Yeah, well, I mean, just for me in general, as a teenager, it was appealing to me because it put me in the driver's seat in life. I wasn't sitting on the back of a ride any longer, being taken around and chauffeured around by reality. I was making the decisions to go out and vandalize public space because public space was dissatisfactory to me. You know, I'm a taxpayer. I'm a citizen. I'm a human being. I belong to this place just as much as everyone else does, but I have no access to anything. I'm shut off. I am basically just a number that pays revenue continuously. And graffiti art was complete liberation to that concept. It basically said, you know, this is your world. What do you want to make out of it? You can make anything out of this place. And so I think that that's the main thing of these alternative subcultures that continually develop in our society is this desire and this need to break out of this conformity, this box that, you know, that they really want to put you in, because you're much more manageable in a box. When you're outside of a box, you know, they don't necessarily have enough hands to hold on to you. And so I think there's a lot of liberation in the subculture.
Right. And you're touching upon some of the issues of, like, is it ethical to vandalize public spaces with artwork and that kind of thing? Right. And you've worked with a lot of the other famous artists or had run-ins with them, people like Shepard Fairey, people like Banksy. I saw the documentary on Ron English, and he's gotten himself into a lot of trouble. But is it ethical or is it even effective to kind of hijack corporate ads for things like McDonald's and kind of resubmit the signal in a way that's critical and maybe wakes people up to the issues of how they're being controlled?
Absolutely. I mean, you know, we live in a society that's run by advertising and marketing pretty much, and the media, which they're all in bed together. But it's like an image is so powerful. An image is 1,000 words and, you know, all these metaphors. And so we're inundated with billboards and advertisements and store names and this and that, and everything's got a name and a logo to it and a design element. And this is eye candy to us, and it's attractive, and it mesmerizes us, and it gets us caught up in spending money on things we don't even need or want, just so we can feel the gratification and the connectivity to society. So, you know, I mean, yeah, you know, graffiti is the antithesis to that. You know, it takes that concept and flips it into, you know, this liberating, self-perpetuating, generating type of energy where, like I said before, you know, I mean, I think we're seeking a way out, and whatever leverage device we can come across that'll get us out of that norm is becoming, I'm really grateful to say this, is becoming actually popular now. For many years of my art career, especially after September 11th, I was, you know, on covers of multiple magazines at once, and TV shows, and art books, and art shows, and whatever else that we desire to get ourselves into. And a lot of that stuff ended for me right after September 11th because my art was unwilling to play the game. I was continuing to criticize, critique, and look into and underneath places that I wasn't invited into artistically. And so I think I got myself into new forms of trouble. They weren't with the law for breaking the law and doing graffiti any longer, but now they're new forms of trouble with just the upper levels that just want to silence that type of work. They didn't really want that type of work being exposed. And I went through some years of hardship to defend my right to do this work, to speak my freedom, in a sense, you know.
Mm-hmm. So we've been looking at your complacency mural with the all-seeing eye, and I guess what are chemtrails as well. Can you talk about some of your other, what do you think are your most powerful murals or images you put online, and what are some of your most well-known images?
Yeah, well, God, I've got so much stuff, but I think that some of my more well-known murals point the finger to the blatant, obvious wrongdoings that go on around here, like chemtrails. I've enjoyed putting kind of a modern-day spin to a Renaissance-level type of painting, where it's not this beautiful clouds and this damsel and this man's arms and this romantic vision. It's a kid with a slingshot using his imagination to shoot a jet out of the sky because it's leaving, you know, toxic white stripes everywhere that's falling down in a powder form, destroying, you know, reality. I've always loved the Renaissance paintings, you know, these beautiful, beautiful, lavish art. Mm-hmm. And I've always felt that, you know, for instance, I feel that art is like an entity. It's a living energy that is like a transistor radio. You can tune into it and embody that power of that art and let it flow through you and be a creative individual. And so I think that art itself has gone through some interesting twists and turns. Previously art was patrons and
yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Let me just interrupt you, because all those commissioned art from the Renaissance, in a way that allowed them to control what kind of messages come out. And street art, by contrast, has been largely independent, decentralized, and kind of unstoppable. But aren't there forces kind of influencing those messages as well?
Yeah, totally. I've been working on this kind of idea recently, which, I've been telling people this, that so through the Renaissance, art finally began to find a little bit of the individual in there. And through the early industrial era, we saw some amazing paintings being created by people that wanted to paint the worker suddenly, or wanted to paint the landscape, or wanted to paint their interpretation of God, which was unheard of previously, or paint a spiritual experience or a political idea like Goya, with his 5th of May, which is talking about the Spanish Revolution. But these paintings were very liberating to people because they were breaking away from the norm of control of thought, basically, similar to people who were writing books, who were being condemned to their death for having literature that spoke out against the church or against the monarchies. And so, art became so free that the bourgeois figured out that they wanted to take it back again. I feel that art became so boring by the 1970s through commercialization and replication and just marketing and advertising, that it had to break away from the aristocrats and become graffiti. It had to become illegal. It had to take itself to the streets and give itself back to kids and teenagers and people that were poor that didn't have access to art because it was locked up in the museums. And what we see now is the commercialization and the reassociation of the advertising, marketing cartels, kind of feasting on graffiti art now. I got to say, street art and graffiti art is very popular globally, and the majority of it no longer speaks to the poor or the alternative or masses of people in the sense of liberating them from the Illuminati or, the control systems that go on around here and stuff. It's just interesting. It's just an analogy that I've been coming up with lately. And,
well, I think Shepard Fairey is an interesting example of that. He famously did the Obey mural with Andre the Giant, a real tongue-in-cheek kind of anti-establishment message, and hundreds of other famous murals that ended up on streets all across the country and later the world. But in 2008, we saw Shepard Fairey's artwork used for the famous Obama image, which at least I view in many ways as an artificial movement to support someone who really was part of the establishment all along. How do you see that in terms of Shepard Fairey as an example of street art being hijacked?
Well, he's a very wealthy artist. He's made millions of dollars, and I'm sure that he, as a businessman, is more concerned with, generating the money and keeping his business up every month than being a radical or a revolutionary or even a true artist. I think that true artists are not really caught up in the money machine. If you're caught up in the money machine, and we all are, we all have rent to pay, we all have to buy our food, we all got to put a roof over our head and whatnot, but there are exceptions of how far you get in bed with these concepts and ideas. And I mean, I've struggled very hard to keep my message true and critical, and I take a lot of heat for it. And I don't want to throw any badness on anyone out there. I respect what everyone does, but yeah, I'm definitely not trying to do some Obama art. Very critical of Obama. I believed in him. I voted for him. I voted for him for two reasons. One, because he was a black man, and I want to see some change socially go down in our country. But two, he was a stand-up human that stood tall and spoke loud and proud and interesting and intellectual. And I thought, this is a good man. I'm going to put my 2 cents with him. And he's completely let me down. He's done absolutely nothing. I consider him a puppet failure. And, you know, it's really woken me up to the fact that it almost doesn't matter who I vote for. I'm not going to be satisfied because the system has a gun to their head. And, you know, these people aren't going to do anything different than the left man.
Well, that's very true, which is why, I mean, how can people who are awakened on any level, whether they're artists or just people finding information on the internet, whatever it is they're involved in, how can we take that energy and keep it outside of that limited two-party system, outside of the same old establishment that's only serving the same interests we've seen in a concentrated way for the past 100 years, but more broadly throughout the power of all of history?
I think that people need to not fear the idea of change so much. And I'm not talking about change of Obama's type of change. I'm talking about serious political change where it is no longer a two-party system. And I don't even want a three-party system. I think we need to broaden that out way broader. You know, I think that there's a lot of changes that we could apply here. Change is applied on us all the time, but we never ask for real change. You know, we're constantly looking to medium it out and make it normal again. And that type of thinking has gotten really old. You know, I think that we have to demand for more options. And as long as we're stuck in this materialistic, monetary, capitalistic society, we have to start demanding what we want to spend our money on. And we have to, you know, we can make a lot of change just with our money alone. I mean, if corporations want to rule and be considered people too and have voting power, well, then we need to take our money and cause these corporations to start providing the goods and services that we desire, that serve us as human beings and not as complacent people to just get more of the same. That's one idea.
Well, I agree with you in general. I also think, you know, a large centralized system, even if it's giving us the goods we want, we have to diffuse that power, take it back to local levels and other levels too, to kind of reinstate a balance of power. But where do you see the larger awakening going?
Well, I think that it's already taking place. I just think that there's so much co-option that's collaborating with the evolution of our thought process. It's really hard to decipher through and see what's real and what isn't. You know, like the Middle East, the whole uprise that's taking place over there over the past few years, it's hard to tell whether that's being induced by the CIA or by MI5 or KGB or whoever it might be. It's hard to tell if it's just over oil and we're trying to prevent China from having access to Africa or the Middle East oil. It's so hard to tell what's what, but we do need more people to rise up. And it's not, I've come to a point where it's not about a violent revolution anymore even. It's really just about people just shifting their focus and no longer buying into what we don't want. I mean, maybe we will have a violent revolution one day, but until that happens, I think there's a lot of things we could be trying to do. And we got to stop allowing the system to put blocks in front of us, like electric vehicles or cleaner water filtration systems or solar power or wind generation. Like, these ideas get so much heat and so much resistance. And we know this stuff is good for us. And then they tell us some BS of why we can't have it, and we just put up with that. And I think that there's a lot of, you know, when George Bush won the first time, I was shocked that nobody stood up and had a major shutdown of society. You know, we got lied to. We continue to get lied to, but we continuously allow them to lie to us. And I'm dying to see people get out their jobs, get out their daily schedule, walk out in the street and stop taking it. I mean, I think everyone wants that, desires that. My mother always wished that so much, you know. But the Occupy movement is pretty interesting. It's pretty beautiful to see that happen. And it's just frustrating to see how it all falls apart and how people end up going back to their normal ways of thinking and being. And I think that comes from the programming, you know, and it's like, it's really important to look into deeper subject matter and to depthen one's own views on stuff and stop expecting the media to just deliver what we need to know. You know, it's like I'm getting my daily report on how I should behave. And that's got to end.
Right, and we see also these kind of revolutionary ideas being hijacked in a steam vent kind of way. Opposition to Bush, for instance, against the war, will be voiced first on the outside of the Democratic Party, but eventually absorbed by it, touted by them in rhetoric, but then it ends up not being the real system by the time a Barack Obama gets elected.
Yeah, really perplexing, you know. And I mean, it makes me angry, and I'm just curious if anyone else out there is angry because it's just I'm just baffled by it. You know, I didn't choose, or I don't think my mother chose to have a child. I don't think my father chose to have a child to grow up like any of us. None of our parents chose for us to grow up into a polluted, screwed up, politically confused reality. It doesn't make sense. And it's really screwed up for so many of us that we are now at this point where, you know, I think about, I'd love to have a child in the future. I don't have any kids, but I have to think about that constantly. What type of a world am I going to leave my child in if I have one? And that's a heavy thought to think about. You know, I wonder how many people out there just picking out kids left and right that don't think about that. And that's another scary thought, you know. Our priorities are really screwed up. I think we need a priority check around here. September 11th was the wrong way to wake us up. That's not doing it, you know. We need something much more powerful. And, you know, that's why people like me and people who I'm influenced by, that I'm really interested in, such as yourselves, you know, it's important that we continue to do this because I know that it's inspiring to other people. I know it inspired me as a child, and I hope that I'm inspiring people right now, and I hope to continue to inspire people to think differently, to think outside the system.
And artwork's obviously very powerful. I was going to ask you that, too, because you're kind of talking about your political inspirations. You've talked about all your artistic inspirations. How has Alex Jones and other alternative voices, those who are branded conspiracy theorists, for instance, how have they affected you personally, but how also do you see them changing our cultural discussions, and which direction is that going?
Yeah, man, I mean, it is a huge influence to me. Like I said, I started off with Behold the Pale Horse, and I just moved on from there from book to book to you know, now the internet is so great. It's amazing to see that the whole world can access this information now. When I was a little kid, this information came to you on a cassette tape from some very strange people that were very paranoid and didn't want anyone to know that they gave it to you, or it came from a book, and it was like a leather-bound book that no one wanted to read. And so if you read it, everyone thought you were weird. And, you know, it just goes down the system like that of how this information has been really hard to seek and find out. And now with the internet, it's amazing to see that everything from Richard Hoagland to Zachariah Sitchin to, you know, ancient technology to secret societies and, you know, just general technology and how technology manipulates our thinking and our general living conditions. It's amazing that we have this access now. And it's a beautiful thing to see that so many of my peers are now hip to these ideas, and it's not old news, it's not weird news, it's not like unbelievable. There's a great deal of people that really know that this is what's happening, and they're woken to it. And you know, that's one of the most positive things I can say going on right now is the mass awakening of people looking towards alternatives finally. You know.
And I think with the internet, we have really a limited window to kind of solidify that we want this information outside of your limited controlled system. And I think that's the message we need to think about, how to make sure this information is permanently in the broader sector of public thought so we can work more towards what is the truth and what kind of solutions we really want to see.
Yeah, I'd say for the past 20 years, a lot of my friends and peers recognize me as a political artist, as a radical, as a rebel in a sense. And I guess my rebellion type of work that I put out has at times caused people to be like, oh, there goes MEAR again, or oh, you're still on that stuff. And that was frustrating. That took me a decade and a half to get through this with everyone, to the point with now they're like, oh, man, I love it when you talk about that. when you share these ideas with me now, I go and I research them and I find out so much more, and it's like, wow, it's amazing that this stuff is real. And, you know, this is just peers walking through a grocery store or walking through another city will walk up to me and say this now. And it makes me feel really great. You know, it's a great feeling to know that we actually can think this way finally, that we're not crazy, that we're not going to, you know, go to jail or be assassinated for thinking this way or be punished, you know, or lose. That there's enough of us thinking this way now. This is a social discourse that we all can take part in. I think that's really important. And I think that that's one of the main ways that this radical rebellion will eventually become, hopefully, part of our normality at a point here, is that the masses will just shift their thinking. And that's always been my greatest hope, because it's not like I wouldn't love to see some crazy revolution take place and us overthrow the institutions and tear down the walls of these horrible places and throw out these sick and twisted individuals on their rears in public and actually throw some of these people in prison for stealing from us and lying and causing great human atrocities around the world. But I mean, I would love to see some of that. But simultaneously, I would be just as happy, if not more happy, if we could all just shift our thinking and all these manipulators would just become instant losers. I think that would be the greatest punishment and retribution we could experience.
Oh, that's the truth right there. And our cultural thinking, our spiritual awakenings, those are more powerful than trying to steer movements through the political system, because they're so easily hijacked. So many revolutions have gone bad. And so in closing, talk about where we could find your work, where people could see more examples and follow the things you're doing. But more broadly, give us some tips. What have you found to be effective in the vein of culture jamming, trying to insert a message that people don't want to hear? How do you break through? What kind of symbolism is most powerful? How can we use the internet, things like Facebook, relatively controlled paradigms, to push messages they don't want to see?
Yeah, well, I guess some of the interesting stuff that I do is, you know, you can look at conspiracy theories and get freaked out over them, and then you can compare those to actual news-related write-ups from around the world. You can check out some of the interesting technology that's being researched at places like MIT out in Boston, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Just any of the iconography that's out there that seems weird and mystical and hokey, and it's almost unbelievable this could be happening. It's really interesting to go into the history and look at where these iconographies come from, what they actually meant to people a long time ago, what they mean to people now. And why are they still used? I mean, if these things are meaningless and they're just imagery and it's just old-timer stuff, then why are we still using this stuff now? Mm-hmm. I think that more than telling people what something is, I like to inspire people to do the work themselves and have their own revelations unfold. But there is plenty of access out there to basically review any of what we're talking about here online. You know, and I guess you can find more of my work on my website, which is www.mearone.com. I'm on Facebook, MEAR ONE. I'm also on Twitter.
And just for people watching, that's spelled MEAR and then the spelled out number 1.
You can check me out at www.mearone.com. That's mearone.com. I'm also MEAR ONE on Facebook and Twitter. You can follow me there. I want to give a big shout-out to Vapors Unite and Don Mega for posting me on Infowars website originally. And tomorrow night at 9 p.m., KCET will be broadcasting the Brit Week Battle LA with myself, MEAR ONE, Man, Inky, and Ein from England. And just a big special thanks to Candace and Vastalia at Brit Week and T4C for putting it all together.
Well, we appreciate having you on, MEAR ONE. Again, you can find his artwork at mearone.com. I know a lot of older listeners may be wondering, why are we showing kind of the street art hip-hop culture thing? Well, people really respond to this today. It's part of the larger debate about what is language, what are these symbols, where do they come from, who defines what they mean, and it's not all the same stuff. You'll see some really uninspiring, garbage messages, but you also see a lot of conscious people using this kind of street art mentality to try to get out a message. That's why we have MEAR ONE on. It's very interesting. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the artwork here in the video, but do go check out his website because it's fascinating stuff. It has deep meaning, much of it, and we appreciate him being on. Don't forget planetinfowars.com. That's where you can do your own independent messaging. You could put your artwork up there. You could do videos analyzing the symbols you see in the media and a whole lot more. Don't forget to support us, too, at prisonplanet.tv. That's all for tonight's Infowars Nightly News. Thanks for watching. I'm Aaron Dykes.